right, we are live once again. Welcome, welcome. Come right in, everyone. So this is going to be a fun little stream. I'll be able to get through everyone's beats this time. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like eight-ish, and then we'll do the beat breakdown afterwards. So yeah, it's probably going to be a bit of a shorter stream. I didn't have as many submissions. Hopefully this wasn't a difficult one. Say a minimum of 12 sounds, maximum of 4 one-shots. So maybe that's where some people might have had difficulty. No 808s. What else? No loops. So yeah, also let me know if my mic is working. Basically, the idea behind this challenge was just to get you guys to rate your own music fundamentally. For me, I'll completely say that this is not my strong suit. I came in more sample based, so writing everything myself, that's probably something that I want more practice in. So I just thought, hey, might as well make this a challenge, and hopefully you guys can also get something out of it as well. So, and also, yeah, I wanted to force you guys to like not have to depend on one shots that already might sound cool, and maybe get more acquainted with the sounds that are in your VSTs. But yeah, let's do a quick audio test here. And we'll get this ball rolling. Also, let me know how you guys are doing. It's a nice sunny day here where I am, so I'm feeling good. I'm gonna get to hang out with a dog later on today, because I know someone's going to be doing some dog sitting. I'm gonna get to hang out with a dog, which is fun. Let me know if this audio sounds good or if we need to make some adjustments. All right, so in the chatas, let me know whether we're good on that front or I need to do some repairs. MCI's out here from Nunavut. That's wild. You're north of me. Illinois, Amsterdam. Margie's from Amsterdam. Where's Saul from? Saul, South Coast, UK. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, let me know in the chat whether the audio was fine there, and if so, we'll get this going. Sounds fine, says Margie. Thank you for the help. And we might as well start with yours, Margie, because we're already listening to it. Oh, Harmider's in here. Did he submit? You did, right here. All right, so let's get this going. I don't feel like I have to rush this time just because I don't have a full list of beats here. So we'll quickly go through these, well, not quickly, but smoothly go through these beats, and we'll do the beat breakdown at the end. So here we go. was Margie's beat there. I think my mic was on for half of that. I apologize if the audio sounded a little bit off there. Nice siren, says Ski. Interesting sound selection, says Harmiter. You pull a good spread. Like jelly spread? What does that mean? Love the dark vibe. Yeah, so I thought this was a great beat by Margie once again. Great job of getting the sounds to feel like samples themselves. I mean, that's one of the challenges with a lot of like VSTs and using a lot of plugins, which is just like I mentioned in the course, a lot of these sounds come very robust and full. And typically, if you're trying to add sounds into beats, it's going to be your job to start to, I guess, my mic on? Yes. It's going to be your job to push the sounds into different spaces so they actually fit in the beat. And I thought that's what Margie did very well with this beat. The sounds all felt very natural. They almost felt like samples with the way you process them. So great job on a lot of the EQing of the different sounds. And it sounded like you also used some degree of saturation or distortion, especially at the end there. You could hear a lot of the static noise. And I think that really contributed into getting the beat to sound like it's a sample. Meanwhile, you know, I'm sure you did a lot of hard work to get that processing done. So well done on that front. I also noticed you played with some modulation here and there. So that was also a very nice touch. The drums are very well done, very upfront, very strong. This is meant to be a very boom bap-ish type of beat. And I thought you just captured that aesthetic perfectly. Nice array of different sounds as well. So, you know, you had your main, I guess I don't know if that's a guitar or like some sort of Eastern Asian instrument, but that was like the sort of POI in my opinion. That was like the main focal point. And you had a nice array of different sounds like the siren, just like Ski mentioned there, that came in and out. You had different instrumentation to keep things interesting. Very well done with the switch up and in order to create the different sections of your beat. It was very distinct what was supposed to be the verse section. Then you had these sort of switch up with the different rhythm of the instrumentation for the hook. I mean, this is a very flawless beat, very well done. The one thing that I might point out is that obviously this is just a small detail, but some of the sounds like the saxophone, I believe, as well as some of those percussive sounds, they were very, very dry and they sat very, very, very like in the middle. And I thought it was a tiny bit jarring, but honestly, it's nothing that's like breaking the beat by any means. This is just me nitpicking at this point. Pat yourself on the back, Margie. There's Grout back again. But yeah, pat yourself on the back, Margie, because this was a very, very well done beat. Very impressive. This, I mean, again, it sounded like it was like a sample or a loop that you used. So it sounds like you know what you're doing, getting very strong with processing sounds, which is a very important skill. Kudos to Margie there. Did Grout submit a beat? Not yet, Grout. Grout, don't be shy. We're all friends here. Next up, we'll go with the young Delgado. Whoops, there we go. All right, that was a young Delgado there. Very drillish type of beat. Grout, you'd be making beats if you didn't have a movie script and a final project to finish. Movie script? They're making you make movies at your school? I wish my school was that cool. So yeah, that's Delgado's beat there. Interesting beat there was. I'm trying to think about like what my feeling or my takeaway was with this beat. So I think there's a great job in the drum work. It was a drill type beat, and it sounded like you got that down. I think the sound selection was pretty good. I thought that all the sounds had a good space that they all sat in. And so there's a lot of processing done to get all the instruments to sit in their own space, which is well done. I think one of the things that hurt this beat, there are two big things that I'd point out here. One is that there was just a lot going on for a lot of the beat, and at times the music actually didn't really line up. So, for example, there was that flute riff that played and just sort of stuck out to me and didn't really. Visionaire's in here as well. What's going on? But yeah, there's like parts of the music that didn't really fit in just because there was just so much going on. And this is one of the things that I mentioned before, which is if you're gonna have something that be very complex in your beat, which I would say the guitar sound in here was very complex. There's a lot of movement, a lot of different notes playing. It might be worth it to simplify other elements, which I would say could have helped that flute, for example. So I would agree with Ski. Vito's in here as well. I'd agree with Ski. The melodies, they had good sounds, but I think just simplifying some of the elements just so you have something that really does stick out as the POI and simplifying everything else would have helped here. And also something that I mentioned in the chorus is that you don't need to have your instruments playing at all times. So you notice when you have the guitar playing, you also have this pretty long, elaborate flute pattern built out. If you just like cut out some of the flutes when it's actually playing, and especially that sort of riff that was like right in the middle of your sort of 2 or 4 bar loop, if you just cut that out and have the flute playing at the beginning and the end, that might have helped simplify that instrumentation. So there's a little bit of a better balance. Grout, you little rascal. So you put the clock. That's all good. Hopefully people get the notification. Maybe a bit too much on the high end. No, I don't think that was a big thing that jumped out to me. I think, yeah, I guess thinking about it now, the drums were very bright, and I guess the flute during that section there was a lot going on. So I think even if young I keep saying Delago, I apologize, Delago. Even if Delago sort of did did cut out a lot of the high frequencies, just musically speaking, there was a lot going on. And another big culprit in this beat was that it didn't really feel like there was a verse section. It was like this hook section that had the sort of guitar, the flute, the crazy drum pattern, the dense bass line that was constantly playing, and then it would switch up to, a breakdown or like a sort of hook section that was just very small and didn't really have much going on. It almost felt like a bridge rather than an actual verse section. And I believe that was one of the instructions that I had here. The hook section must be large in size compared to the verse. So maybe that's a struggle with this beat here, where the sort of balance in between a hook being as large as it was here, but then it's sort of reducing and simplifying to the verse. I think if Delago just took the guitar sounds and maybe simplified the drum pattern, simplified the bass line so it wasn't playing constantly, he would have had a good verse section. But with the amount that he reduced here and how long each section was, it didn't really feel like a verse section to me. So I think structurally there were some issues here. The really good idea within this beat, fundamentally the instrumentation that was chosen was very good, just like Ski says. Yeah, so thanks for the feedback. I started well, but had a hard time on the arrangement. So I think that's sort of what stuck out to me here. Just like I mentioned, the idea here is really good. There are good sound selection. There's a good sound selection here, but when it comes time to arranging, I don't see any video or hear anything. Huh? Hopefully that's something on your end and not mine. But yeah, so so with the arrangement, I would say start sort of practicing and trying to get a better balance for what the verse sections would feel like. So for me, when I build my beats, I sort of like to make sure that both of those sections are built out accordingly. I start with the verse section and get like a nice level, and I sort of map that out, and then I start pushing it further and start building it a little bit more. And then at that point, I start to pick and choose which sounds I want to include for the hook section. So yeah, I think you have all the right elements here. I think just cutting out certain parts, maybe for the verse section, deleting some of the drum sounds, maybe just cutting out like the hi-hats for the most part, not making them as complex, cutting out some of those bass notes so it's not constantly playing throughout the entire thing. Those are some approaches that you can take to sort of help with your arrangement. Just like I said in the course, reducing in size. So you just take some of the elements that you already have, cut them out. That's pretty much a technique that you can do to build out a verse in comparison to what you built here with the hook. It works now. Excellent. All right, let's keep on going. Young Vito, your beat's up next. All right, challenge number 2. That was Vito's beat there. Let's put you in green. So Grout says the delay effect should be used more transitionally. It's a bit much to use all the time. Margie mentioned very nice beat, but everything seems quite far in the back. I agree with Margie. The drums could have been pushed forward, like open up the filter on a bit. So that's a very interesting point. So with my takeaway, one of the things with this beat is that the sort of main idea. So Grizzle says some cool sounds in here, maybe more high end on the snare. So just like I was saying, the main idea with this beat is that the chord progression is very simple, really cool texture, I will say. With this beat in total, I really like the sort of sound selection, really unique textures, like that cool acid bass that would show up here and there, and the chord progression itself, the sound that you chose was really on point. Yeah, really done well with the sound selection and choosing sounds that are really cool and unique. It wasn't just a typical, piano type beat or whatever. Jake Trotter, how much was missed? I started just 10 minutes ago, or 20 minutes ago, so that should be fine. Sounds like the thunderous snares would be more upfront if they weren't delaying so hard. So I really like the types of sounds that were chosen here, but the way that they were sort of instituted into the beat didn't quite work as well. So one of the things that Grout and Margie mentioned here is that the beat sounds nice, but everything seems quite far in the back. So just like I mentioned in the YouTube video that I just put out on Tuesday, a big reason why that sounds the way it does is because, just like Grizzle mentioned right after that, there's not much high end with pretty much any of these instruments in the beat. So that's something that really jumped out to me. There's not much going on with the high end in any of the instruments, and that's part of the reason why everything just felt very washed out and sort of in the back and not very... there's not much control for depth in this beat. So with Vito, I would say just think more about like putting different sounds into different planes rather than just a sort of binomial type of view, or sort of like a dualistic type of view where it's just either front or back. Sort of think about pushing things really far back, think about putting things sort of in the middle, putting things very like up close and up front. And so for the things that you want up close, just like I mentioned in the video, adding sort of more bright textures, like taking the snare and making sure you have a nice high-end presence on the snare can help with that, or with the hi-hats as well. Just play around with the different instruments that you have in here, and just like Grout mentioned, open up the filters on some of them, reduce the high end on some of them, reduce the high end cutting on some of them. Play around with adding some bit crushing, just like I mentioned in that video. So yeah, I would say Vito, it sounds like you have a cool idea here. You chose some really cool sounds in here, but unfortunately they just sort of started to blend into one another. So I'd really recommend watching the YouTube video that I put out on Tuesday, in case you sort of need a little bit more clarification on what I'm talking about in terms of depth. Great job with structuring of the beat as well. I will say I sort of clearly knew which part of the beat was the verse, which part was the hook, and you did exactly what I asked for, to sort of have a hook section that feels bigger, and that's exactly what I got here. So yeah, good job in terms of putting the sort of different ideas together and going exactly doing exactly what I asked in the sort of rules. I think you did a good job on that front. It's just, I think just the depth control with this beat could have really elevated it if you just institute some of those ideas that I just mentioned in the video I put out. Young J Trot just came into the room. Let's take a listen to the Young Trot's beat. that was the Young Trotters beat there. So Vita says, I think he added too much effects because he used VST sounds other than samples. He's still struggling with using effects and plugins. Yeah, I think that's sort of the reason why I wanted to push you guys to use VSTs with this challenge. Partly was to write your own music and sort of get used to that, because that's personally something that I want to get better at as well. But also it does come with the idea of learning how to push different sounds into different spaces and sort of figuring out how to process sounds and use effects in ways that actually help the beat. So that's sort of one of the struggles that I wanted you guys to sort of push through with this beat and sort of start to try to learn and figure out how to do yourselves. With this beat, Grout says chords sound pretty gospel R&B. It's exactly what I had written down. It sort of sounded very churchy to me. Good use of melody on the smaller parts to enhance the melody. Seems almost too nice, says Grizzle. All glued well together, says Saul. Needs to get even bigger though. Yeah, the chorus could definitely be a bit bigger sounding. Chill, says Chaz. I like this one. Simple and good space for an artist, says Ski. So with my takeaway with this beat, I think it's a good job, Mr. Trotter, of writing the music. I think just like Grout said, the chords and the sort of feeling of this beat were very on point. All the elements that you chose with the sort of Rhodes and the different instrumentation that you used felt very emotional and very like confessional is like a good way of putting it. This felt like if I was confessing to a priest in rap form, this would be the beat that I would use as the background. So yeah, great job on that front. Hopefully that was your intention. Hopefully you weren't trying to make like a club banger with this beat and it somehow made it like a church beat. But if that was your intention, great job on that front. Great job of abiding by the rules, like people mentioned. Making it even bigger could have helped, but I think somewhat of what could have helped it appear bigger was sort of working on the transitions with this beat. So just like I mentioned in the course, how instead of just bringing all the sounds in at one point, you can sort of play with the idea of transitioning from section to section. So just like when you went from the verse to the hook, making it sort of more obvious that we're about to transition and sort of building that anticipation by dropping certain instrumentation or sort of playing with the rhythm of certain sounds or creating a little bit of a new musical phrase for that certain short part of time. These are all things that you could have done to really delineate between, okay, here's the verse section, it's about to end, we're about to go in the hook section. I think that would have helped with the different sections as well if you're struggling with making it more obvious which part was the verse, which part was the hook. I think with this beat though, another thing that sort of stuck out to me was this one had a little bit of the opposite effect as Vito's, where everything really felt up front and close. So this beat, I would say, play around with where things sit in the beat, and there were sort of small noises that came in here and there. This just randomly popped into my head, but I remember when I was watching some interview of Rick Rubin, and they were talking about making Yeezus. They had this philosophy of, if it doesn't sound good when it's loud, cut it out. And that's something that's always stuck in my head, where I sort of, in my own beats, I sort of sneak in these little sounds here and there. They don't really contribute to the beat in any meaningful way, and they sort of end up cluttering the beat in a sense. And I sort of realized that, I'd start to push them way back into the beat and sort of hide them. But at that point, I'm just like, well, does this really help the beat, or am I just adding shit in just for the sake of adding shit in? And if I did make it loud, does it still sound good, or am I throwing things way back into the beat because they don't really sound all that great and I sort of want to hide it? So generally speaking, I'm not saying that's a problem with this beat. This is just something that randomly stuck into my own head. And that might be a thing that you could you guys could all think about when it comes to writing the music and the sort of extra notes and whatever and adding more sounds in. If you find yourselves pushing things away or making things very low in volume, is it because you're doing it to create balance, or is it because it just doesn't really sound that great when it's more present? So something to think about. I often struggle with transitions, says Jake. Yeah, so I'd go back to the course when I talked about arranging and sort of think about that model that I laid out, the 5 different variations that you can choose to use to create the different sections of your beat. And you can use it on a micro level as well when you're starting to play with the transitions of the beat. Something that I oftentimes do is just cut out the drums, reduce the size, if to put it in the course's terms, and sort of create a little bit of variation, whether it's with melody or with the chords or what have you. Yeah, I'd really recommend going back to that section of the beat. But yeah, it really felt like, you know, I've been listening to your beats for this whole time. It definitely does sound like you're improving. I would say that. This was a very on point, very deliberate feeling beat. And I think that's very encouraging to hear. I think just keep working at it. Those small little things that, you know, pop up with every single challenge where you're like, okay, this is something small that I struggle with. Obviously, practice, repetition are going to be key, and also just keeping those things that I mentioned in mind. Always, the course is always there to help you guys with whatever struggles that you might have. So going back to the arranging section, if you want, and sort of looking at the transitions and how I built the transitions in the beat that I had in the course, you can take some of those ideas and yeah, think about instituting those into your own beat. So yeah, you're on the ups, Jake. I think I've definitely heard improvements from when you started to where we are now, young man. Pat yourself on the back. All right, that was the young Eric B's beat there. From the looks of you guys' comments, I'm pretty much on the same page. Crowd says there's not much melody, if at all, in here. Jake says there needs to be something going on with that guitar. Ski says yes, it could use more instrumentation. It sounds like it almost sounds like it's used as a bass. Nice acoustic drums though, says Chaz. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good bass line. Just needs to do more with it, says Jake. Like Captain Beefheart found to studio. So with this beat, I'm a little bit out of my element just because I don't have as much experience with live recording, which it sounds like this was all the instruments were done with live recording. The recording environment sounded like it had a bit of excessive reverb on it. It sounds like there was a lot of sort of spillage with the different sounds. So there could have been a little bit more control and a little bit more processing with all the different sounds to sort of tighten things up a bit. I definitely feel the energy of where this can go. It has some fun sounds in there. I think it just doesn't necessarily get to the destination, says Grizzle. Yeah, so my takeaway with this beat was it sort of felt like an initial idea that wasn't fully fleshed out. Listening to this beat, I mean, I sort of want you guys to use a minimum of 12 sounds. And just like a lot of people in the chat said, it could use more instrumentation. I'm pretty sure this didn't meet the 12 sound requirement. I mean, unless you count each different drum sound as a different instrument. So yeah, I think I will agree with a lot of you guys are saying. It sounds like a sort of idea here. I sort of understand what the song was going for. And I will say the thing that I liked about this song is it did have a pretty cool structure. It sort of had that very sort of middle line energy level throughout the verse. And then it really picked up. And I think you did a great job, just like I mentioned with the last beat, of creating those transitions where you sort of dropped the instrumentation and you came in heavy and the energy level really picked up. So that I understood what you're going for there, and you did a good job of structuring out the song so it really did feel that way. I think though, just like a lot of people said, it needs more music. Whether that be like with a song like this, it's hard to really evaluate because if the singing, this to me feels like if it was like some sort of Metallica type singing on top or something. Again, I'm sort of out of my wheelhouse with this. If there's a very large, present, yelling voice that was sort of screaming in a rock song type fashion or like a metal type of thing, I can see how so minimal of instrumentation could work. Obviously, those things that I just mentioned about the live recording space, like the sort of spillage, also still does play into this and sort of needing to tighten things up. But overall, with this idea as it is, the vision's there, the idea's there. It just needs a little bit more in terms of variation. And it could use a little bit more instrumentation as well. Just like Grant mentioned, this sort of guitar was used as a bass and sort of the focal point of the beat. It's meant to just drive pretty much everything. And without vocals, it's sort of hard to imagine this feeling full if the sort of performance isn't balls to the wall, absolutely in your face, screaming. So yeah, I think this feels like an incomplete idea as it is. I do understand the idea there. There does need to be a little bit more control and a little bit more put into this. But really interesting direction here. I didn't know we had some rock boys in the crowd here, so cool to see. Yeah, when I reread Grizzle's sort of comment here, I definitely feel the energy of where this could go. Some fun sounds in here, just doesn't get to the destination. So yeah, I sort of feel the same way where it just feels a little bit incomplete, but the energy and the idea is there. I just like to see it more fleshed out and sort of more work put into just building it up a little bit more, whether that be through additional instrumentation or some variation with what you have, or processing the instrumentation so it's a little bit more present and a little bit more punchy, because those drums, with the way they were recorded, like I mentioned, it was in a very open and reverby space, so it didn't really have much tightness or punch to it. So you might need to like compress individual drum sounds, which is why with a lot of live recording, the few little experience that I have with it, a lot of people sort of mic up each individual instrument and like put the mics in different places and try to position, you know, the mic over here in regards to the snare, pushing it over here, maybe trying to make the hi-hat mic a little bit higher, all in sort of an effort to make things a little bit more punchy and create a better recording. And even after the audio is recorded, they still go through the process of like compressing all the different sounds, adding saturation, playing around with tightening different instruments up, EQing. So all that stuff would need to be done with this beat in order to really have it sounding full and getting the drums to be a lot more present and punchy, and having that sort of bass line do as much heavy lifting in the song as you need it to sound a little bit more full and for the idea to really be there. So yeah, that's why I mentioned more processing would be needed for that beat. So yeah, let's move on to Ski's beat here, Gravity. Ski's beat there, Gravity. Really cool direction. That's the first time I think we've heard of more electronic type of sound with a beat, as you guys mentioned in the chatas. So Ski mentioned right off the bat, in retrospective, I feel like I may have failed the 3D test again. I find it hard to gauge the more synthetic sounds. Yeah, so 4 on the floor, like Grout mentioned, which is a drum pattern that you don't commonly hear with hip hop. But for me, I love 4 on the floor songs. That's exactly what I did for the My Friend Pedro soundtrack. That's the wheelhouse that I was in for a lot of it. That synthwave vibe, very cool, says Grizzle. I really like the bass, says Jake. Dark wave, says Grizzle. Is that considered dark wave? I don't know what these genres are anymore. Cool vibe. I like the sound, says Visionaire. Saw like the glitchy hats. It's a bit slow for 4 on the floor. I guess it depends. I got Cuddy vibes, says Jake. Yeah, I guess it depends on like the vocal performance and what the artist would do with this. It's not like a sort of club dance standalone type of song from what I sort of took away from this. But even then, I still could, if you just pushed the sort of processing and the different instruments in different places, it could stand alone as like a cool background type of song for like a movie or something. But yeah, with the beat itself, like Ski, you mentioned, you feel like you may have failed the 3D test. I thought for the most part you did a good job. You had that sort of cool synthy sound way in the back, and you had a more aggressive synth that's more in the front. You had your drums very dry and very in your face. I think maybe brightening up the beat as a whole might have helped and really creating a little bit more of an extreme dichotomy between the different sounds. But overall, to me, it sounded like you were very deliberate with the different sounds and you sort of did make sure that the sounds were at least a bit in different spaces. So I don't feel like it was a huge cataclysmic fail with the 3D test. I thought it's a pretty good job there. Everything had its own space, and I sort of understood what every instrument was meant to be doing. I really liked the different sounds that you chose, just like Visionaire mentioned. Really cool sound selection. Margie Black, that was a very interesting sound. That sounds like a male voice. Was there a male voice in there? Yeah, it would be a good film score, says K.L.S. Yeah, I agree completely. It sounds like it would be like the background music for when the posse was planning their bank heist or something. So yeah, great job on that front. With the beat itself as like, we'll take it as like a standalone thing. The structure had, I guess, some things that could have been adjusted. So you sort of did a very dense sort of hook chorus area, but the more verse section, it felt like a big long breakdown. It wasn't necessarily like a verse. It sort of felt like a long bridge up until the next hook. So I think a big part of that, part of the reason why I felt that way was because there are just absolutely no drums outside of those areas. So if we look at the waveform again, so there you had the 4 on the floor, you also had the snare, but like during this section, I guess the thing is there's no kick. Like the structure during this section got very loose and it felt like a more of a breakdown rather than a verse section. So I think just adding a kick here and there, and maybe you might need to transition the rhythm, which is part of the reason why 4 on the floor is just so hard to institute into a more traditional hip hop type of feel, because 4 on the floor is its own type of rhythm. And then when you need to transition to a traditional like kick on the 1, snare on the 2 and the 4, and maybe a kick, somewhere in between, as opposed to being 4 on the floor, that's when things can get difficult to try to transition in between those two different types of frameworks. And maybe that's sort of the reason why you went down this route. As it stood though, just like I mentioned, the sort of structure felt a little bit too loose and the energy got dipped way too low for it to feel like a verse. So what I would say, cool to hear a lot of things, great things about Diva. Yeah, there's no kick in the verse section. So yeah, I think figuring out a way to pick up the energy level a tiny bit more during that verse section might be something that might be necessary. But yeah, really cool sound selection, really unique approach to the beat making challenge here. I mean, I really love hearing different types of beats rather than just sort of the typical hip hop. So I can definitely appreciate what you did here. Great use of space, great use of unique textures and getting all the different unique sounds to fit in with each other, which can be really difficult. You did a phenomenal job there. The only thing that really sort of needs a little bit more attention was the structure of the beat and maybe just brightening up certain sounds. But other than that, you did a great job, Ski. I'm very, very impressed with this song. Kudos to you, Ski. That was a very enjoyable listen, very unique, and I enjoyed it. Next up, we've got Young Harmiter. I don't think I've seen him in the chat since he came in. Maybe he's hiding. Let's take a listen to his beat here. That was Young Harmiter, Eric Reichel. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Let's put you in green. Saul says the drums were delicious, a good bounce on the drums. Ski liked that string buildup. The bass line was what Saul enjoyed. Grizzle says good melodic elements. Margie liked the strings together with the other instruments. Very nice beat and switch up. Great. So yeah, with this beat, I think very good job with the aesthetic work here. You sort of had that very cool, calm feel for the beat with the intention here. It felt very Animal Crossing-esque, even though I've never played that game, or I don't think I've even heard the music. But just visually, that's what I'd imagine the game feels like. Or maybe Stardew Valley. I remember playing that game. Grizzle says good melodic elements throughout. So yeah, great aesthetic work, great sound selection with those strings. Just like I mentioned in a lot of previous streams, it can be really hard to get them to fit in the beat. I thought you did a good job of getting them to fit with what you've played and how you sort of process them. I think you did a good job of the structuring as well, just like Margie mentioned, and just like I sort of wanted you guys with the beat structure. You had the verse section, which obviously was sort of a little bit more low energy, and then you built things up for the hook, which is exactly what I wanted, and you did a good job of it. You had a really cool idea of that sort of building string patch, and you sort of raised in volume, which is a sort of cool idea. Yeah, you think you flawlessly executed the intent of this beat. Great job with the aesthetic work. I got the intention of what you're going for. Yeah, all around good job. There was one thing, I don't know, maybe my hearing is a bit off. There's this part where the chord progression, like the progressions, sorry, the chords changed, but the arpeggiating synth that you had playing with it didn't change. The sort of fundamental notes of the arp needed to move up with the chords, but they didn't. I might not know what the hell I'm talking about, though, in terms of music theory related talk. So let me know what the hell I'm talking about. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's earlier, actually. Was it right there? Something about that transition. I think you played the exact same note back to back when the chords changed. Maybe that's what stuck out to me. I think either way, maybe someone that's more knowledgeable in music theory could point out what the hell I'm talking about. But that felt a tiny bit awkward. But again, I'm nitpicking. I think you did a good job of achieving exactly what you're going for with his beat. And yeah, really impressive work with getting your VSTs to actually feel sample-ish and very sort of getting them to sit in the right spaces with building a more like a very full sounding beat, which is exactly what you have here. Red Octane comes in at the last second. So we'll save you for last, Red. Next up. That was young Saul there, Saul Sherry, with the beat Brass Hands. So Red Octane, or sorry, the Jake says that stop was a bit abrupt. Grizzle, Saul, you always have such interesting textures and vibes. Good stuff. Interesting sounds. Love the panning. Works as ski. Really liking the sound, says Jake. It might sound too filtered in the high end, says Grizzle. I love the sounds you get, but I think the drums and rhythm need work, says Harmiter. I like the pitch down on the synth pluck that you drop in once in a while. Agreed with Eric. I can see where you're going. Not bad by any means, quite unique. So yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you guys are talking about. This beat has really cool textures. I'd love to see how you process that main cool weird synth, because that's such a unique texture. Yeah, you guys probably know how much of a sucker I am for like unique approaches to sound selection, and I think Saul, really cool processing. Love all the sound selection and the way you sort of push the sounds. I'm a big fan of what you did with the sound selection in this beat. Unique drum pattern, just like I think that was Harmiter that you mentioned. The rhythm of it was very unique and very different. So how can I think the one thing that I would say is that there were times in this beat when there was a lot going on. And one of the advantages of using a very straightforward drum pattern with a very straightforward rhythm, for the guys that were in the Discord, oh, Eric's bouncing. All right, thank you for stopping by, young man. Have a good shift. If you guys mentioned or remember in the Discord, someone brought up that video about why is this drum pattern used, or why is this rhythm used in every single song. The advantages of using that type of rhythm to me is that it's just very open and it leaves a lot of room for different types of rhythms to come in and out with the other instrumentation. So with this beat here, the part of the beat where that drum pattern worked was when things were a little bit more simple and a little bit more basic. So when you just had that cool sounding loop and the drum pattern and not much else, that's when things really came together and felt like everything worked. I think when you brought in that bass that had its own unique rhythm with the bass line that you programmed and the other sort of musical elements that you started introducing, that's when things started to sort of feel like they would start to fight with one another. You just had a lot of different rhythms in this song or in this beat that were just doing a lot of different things and a lot of musicality with it as well. So with the sound selection and the sounds and the processing that you did, phenomenal job. I think if you just simplified this beat a little bit more and you weren't as sort of musical with your bass line, for instance, you did something that's a little bit more, just a straightforward progression instead of having as many notes as you did there. And or if you want to go down the different route of simplifying that drum pattern, but to me it sounds like you really love what you did with the drum pattern, because honestly I did too. I really love the sort of unique pattern that you came up with. But in that regard, just like I mentioned in the chorus, rhythmic variation. If you're going to have something that sounds very unique and out there in terms of the rhythm, and you have something that's a little bit more unique and weird and complex, maybe going to your other elements and simplifying things and sort of creating a nice amount of variation might serve you a little bit better. Other than that, though, one other thing, like Grizzle mentioned, maybe too slightly filtered on the high end. If you just brought up some of the high end with this beat, and also just like I mentioned in the course, one of the things that I like to do is just put the soft clipper on the master. Even if you just sort of added a little bit of compression right before the limiter, in any way that you sort of feel comfortable, I think this beat would feel a lot more present and full. But yeah, honestly, Saul, really, really cool sounds in this beat. Really cool idea. I honestly, just a small little tweaks here and there could really lift this beat and really push it to be such a sort of full and audacious sounding beat that still works and sounds great. So a pat on the back for Saul. Really love this idea. Just some small tweaks here and there, some little bit of a simplification here and there, and playing around with a little bit of the different spaces of the different sounds could really bring this beat to the next level. But the idea's there, the execution for the most part was there, so really great job by Saul here. I enjoyed that beat. We're an hour in, so I'll finish off these last 3 beats, and then I will do my breakdown and show you guys what I did with my beat. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter stream, so we'll call it a day after that. That was young Chasberg right there. Stephen Hawking's got bars. Yeah, that was a hot vocal sample in there. Happy Duck Synth Sense Grizzle. The shaker could use a little bit more EQing, says Red Octane. That lead reminds me of Home Residence. I don't think I've heard that song. Very creative, might be a bit too much with the synths at times, says Grizzle. The chorus is growing on me, says Ski. Definitely grew on me as it progresses, Jake. The melody synth feels a bit plain, certainly compared to everything else that is going on in here, says Saul. Discordant Ducks. This is a bop, says K. Dot. So I guess with this beat, I guess it's meant to be a little bit more of a sort of standalone song. There's a few things that I will point out. For one, the drums, I guess the kick needs a little bit more presence with a 4 on the floor type of song like this. With the bass not as present as it is, you really need the kick to be the driving force of the beat. And I think the sample that was chosen here was just a little bit, I guess, frail and fragile and weak sounding. So just something that's a little bit more subby and a little bit more on the low end would really help create that driving energy of the beat. I think the big thing with this song, though, this feels like too much Molly by myself beat. The big thing with this, it's sort of similar to what Saul was saying. Well, I guess a couple things. Sorry, who was? Yeah, it was Grizzle. Sorry. Might be too much going on with the synth at times. So this sort of speaks to what I was saying before. At times in this song, the music just wasn't lining up. There was a lot of arpeggiating sounds with really complex melodies that were really jumping up and down all over the place in terms of the notes that were being played. And at times they would just end up going in different directions and different places and just not really working. It just felt like it was going in and out between all the different musical elements coming together finally, and then a second later they would start jumping and doing really different things and sort of not working with one another. And this speaks to the idea that I mentioned earlier. It's going to be a good idea to have some variation. And with this beat here, it felt like the overall intention was, let's make everything as complex as possible. So I think if you're going to have, for example, that sort of discordant duck sound in your beat be the main focus, taking your other sounds and making them less complex musically speaking and simplifying them and making sure things work together musically instead of taking every single element in your beat and trying to make them as musical as possible is going to be really important. Just like I said in the chorus, do what's best for the beat, not for your ego. You don't have to be super musical with every single piece of instrumentation in your beat. There are going to be times when being very simple and straightforward, it might not be as fun. It might not feel as fulfilling. And you might think, well, I'm just trying to have fun with this beat. I don't really care. At the end of the day, we're trying to make good music here. And so one of the things that you might need to do at times is just be simple. And I think that's one of the things that this beat could have used with certain elements. And I think another thing that I would say is that part of this challenge was to get you guys to use presets and VSTs and try to learn how to process them. And just like Saul said, the melodies, the synth feels a bit plain, certainly compared to everything else going on in here. I would have liked to see a little bit more processing just because a lot of those sounds felt like they were just the raw presets that were used and pulled from the actual VST, and not really much consideration was put into getting them to sit in a better space. So again, just like I mentioned in the course, a lot of these presets, a lot of these VSTs that you use, the sounds are sort of more useful for when you're starting a beat, just because every single sound is just so robust and full. If you're in the part of the beat where you're building and you've already sort of come up with a lot of the main ideas and it comes time to just adding sounds here and there, you are going to need to process those sounds yourselves, whether that be using EQs, which is probably going to be necessary, or reverb to push it back. If another sound is very upfront, playing around with the stereo space, you're going to need to push different sounds into different spaces to get everything to feel very balanced. And that's another thing that just really wasn't here with this beat. Just a lot of raw synths, a lot of raw sounds, just like Saul was mentioning there. So yeah, I think, a really cool, I guess, unique idea was done here, or you tried to execute a really cool, unique idea. just those two things is what I would start with when you're trying to go with your next beat. Don't be afraid to be simple, because at times every beat is going to require some element in there to be very simple and straightforward. And that's not a failure of you as a producer if you have to do something simple. A lot of the times it feels like doing something completely complex is how you show off that you're good at making music and you know what you're doing. I think you need to simplify at times, and as well start to play around with processing and getting comfortable with the different types of tools that are at your disposal. EQs are going to be super important, reverbs, stereo tools, just like I mentioned in the course, the different spaces when it comes to the tonal variation of a sound. You're going to need to start to get comfortable with those spaces to get your final product of the beat to sound full yet balanced and not really have the sounds fight with each other. So those are the two things that I would say to focus on with your next beat and get more comfortable with, young Chaz Meister. All right, Grizzle and then Red Octane, and then we look at my beat. All right, that was a young Grizzle MD. I guess he's a doctor. Grizzle, so let's see here. Low end sounds a bit cluttered during the first part, or maybe the bass isn't punching through enough. Can't quite tell, says Jake. Saw like the 8-bit ARP, but something feels a bit shrill about the synth. I think you're referring to the one in the hook. Red Octane, I like that banjo nylon guitar, maybe a bit too dry, just a touch of reverb. Love the sound selection though. Maybe a bit more EQ on the wind instrument. Visionaire says he loves or like that bass. Feeling the VST saying Figaro, Figaro, Figaro. Ski says the drums are cool. Drums have a great pattern. The airiness, Grizzle says the airiness of the sound I was using was a constant fight. I should have just scrapped and started over, but I tried to push it out. The airiness of some of the sounds. Oh, I see. I wish I was young. What does that mean? They are a tad airy, but they sound good for sure. The Beat Doctor right here, Grizzle MD. So first off, young man. Number 4. Do I need to zoom in? I think I do need to zoom in so you can see it. How do you zoom in on Google? Whatever. No 808s. It sounded like you, your beat is sick, Grizzle MD. Sounds like you used an 808, so you should be banished for breaking the rules. Nonetheless, though, I'll still, I guess, take this on the other elements in this beat. I think you did a good job of a lot of the processing on the different sounds. There were a few sounds that I guess you did struggle with, but nothing that was very, like, I guess, beat breaking or made it sound completely awful. Things still did sound, it's an output substance bass. I guess I should have been a little bit more clear. I wanted something that didn't have the shape of an 808, rather, even if you made it yourself or you used a sample, I sort of want you guys to use something other than something that has that tail of an 808 and that sort of boominess of an 808. Top left. No. That's too late. The joke is ruined already. I like the pads in the back of the chorus, but I feel like they should have been more behind the lead. So yeah, what I would say is good processing on the sounds. There were times when that 808 that you did use felt a bit too subby, but not enough color. So what I would have done was maybe shifted the overall frequency presence with a little bit of distortion, so there's a little bit more color in the high end. Maybe reduce some of the subbiness of it. The structure was there, so good job of abiding by that rule. So at least I know you can read, Grizzle. God. So yeah, you had the part of the beat that was more of a verse section with that arpeggiating 8-bit sound, and then you moved into the verse section that had the sort of fluty wind instrument. So I think good job on that front. You had different instrumentation for the different sections of the beat, which can be hard to pull off at times. I think you did it very well here. So good job there. And just like some people said, you struggled with the airiness of the different sounds. For me, this is why personally I somewhat avoid using pads during a verse section, because it adds so much into your beat that it becomes very difficult to add any semblance of, I guess, balance in a way. Red Octane used something 808-esque. But yeah, I think that's probably part of the reason why you struggle with the airiness, was because you had a very airy sound as constantly playing throughout the entire beat. Personally, that's something that I struggle with as well, trying to figure out good ways to add pads into a beat that isn't completely fills up the beat and like leaves very little room. In terms of the wind instrument on that flute, it did feel a little bit dry. It sat in a very, I guess, not an optimal place in the beat. I might have tried to add a little bit of delay. That might have helped, but I'd have to play around with the sound itself. Overall, cool idea. I really like the execution, even though you did break the rule and you're a lawbreaker. You think you're above the law. But yeah, it was a cool beat. You did some really difficult things in this beat, so I applaud you on that. So yeah, I think one of the comments was just a little bit of mixing work could have helped. I sort of agree, but maybe the fundamental issue is that use of that pad, and I think the fact that you also sounded like you used a little bit of bit crushing or distortion on that pad, which might have really hurt your ability to really control the sound, just because not only is it constantly playing throughout the beat, it's also a little bit brighter than it might typically be, and a little bit more present sounding because of that. So, or maybe that you just used noise. I'm not 100% sure. If you go back into the beat here, it sounded like you used some sort of bit crushing. So that tiny bit of static in the back there. Like that noise that's going throughout the beat, that might have made things a little bit more difficult for you than maybe need be. Using that plus a pad, that's quite a bit of sort of ambient noise that's sitting in the background. So yeah, that might have been a reason why you sort of had trouble with airiness. Right, last beat. This is actually timing up pretty well because we're gonna get to 1:30 and we'll spend like half an hour or so on my beat, look at the different things in there, and then we'll call it a day. Young Corbg beats. Let's take a listen. That was a quick ending. So that was Red Octane's beat there. So that, I don't know whether that would classify something 808-esque. That's somewhere in the middle of like an 808 and just like a typical synth bass that just doesn't have much color to it. Yeah. So Grizzle says you did try to saturate that synth, so yeah, maybe that could be the reason. Jake Trotter, I really like this one. Drum sounds great. Grizzle, lots of good textures. I like the vibe. Ski, the drums are great. The melodies are laid back just enough so we can appreciate it. That bellish sounds with the delay sounds really good too. Well done, says Jake. You put a lot of drums or work on the drums. Has always been my weak spot, so thank you. So yeah, with this beat, I think I would agree that you did a great job with the drum work. The sort of small attention to detail I could really hear with the panning and the sort of different textures that are sort of not as in your face. You built something really nice there. Overall, I just really like the sound selection. Really cool sounds that really married well with one another. Very sort of cool, dark sounding beat, like a sort of nighttime drive type of beat. All the different sounds that you chose really contributed to creating a sort of overall picture and aesthetic, and everything really made sense with all the different textures that you chose. So good job on that front. I would say a little bit more high-end presence and just overall loudness to some of the sounds might have been nice. Yeah, I think just the instruments, I think you just finished this right before the stream, so maybe that's why. But a lot of the sounds layered 5 different trillion basses. Wow. It's a cool sounding bass, I'll say that. But yeah, a lot of the sounds are just a little bit quiet and there wasn't much high-end presence, so just boosting some of those up might have been an idea. And I think with the drum pattern, as much work as you did, I think during the verse section, maybe simplifying things, whether it be with the drum pattern or maybe some of the other melodic elements, might have been an idea, just because it did feel a lot was still going on during the verse section. Even though it wasn't completely sort of breaking, I think a nice amount, a little bit more openness during the verse section could have helped. But overall, a really cool beat here. I liked it. I really liked the feel of it. The sound selection was great. You just finished right before the stream, so maybe just boosting some of the sounds and playing around with leveling could really bring this beat up. But good job to young Red Octane. We did it, guys. We got through all the beats. We will now quickly go through my beat that I came up with. I hope that my computer doesn't crash. So if it does, we might need to, I don't know if I'll have time to print out all the different sounds. So let's load up FL Studio. I will add window capture. What is this window? FL Studio, there we go. All right, so let me know if it's showing up on the screen, and if so, we'll get to it. Karasama just got in. I hope you're doing well, Karasama. We're just starting the beat breakdown. If I got to that point with stacking drums, I'd render it as a one-shot or a direct wave instrument. Yeah, if it's really sucking down your CPU, like my computer is about to do here, printing it out would be a good idea, but I wanted to make sure you guys see that these were indeed all from VSTs. Jesus, that's a lot of VSTs. So this beat was a little bit strange. You know what, where am I on the screen? Hold on. Let me put myself up here, and we'll just make me a little small fella in the corner. And you guys can see my cutie boy face. So yeah, let me know if yeah, FL's there. So let me quickly do an audio test here. Hopefully it's still listenable. Yeah, this sounds like dog shit on my end. There's a lot of slowdown here, and I don't have anything else open really. I could X out of Discord in this one. Let's see if that. Rats. Video's gonna be up. Yeah, it's not gonna get deleted, so don't worry about that. You know what? I'm just gonna start. Here's what I'll do. I'm gonna delete some of the less important sounds, so I'm not gonna be able to go through every single sound in this beat. I mean, I have fucking 5 instances of Omnisphere open, and I don't think any of those sounds are really central. The biggest sound here was yeah, I think I'm gonna delete some of this stuff. So I'm not gonna be able to explain everything. I have no idea what I'm really deleting right now. So hopefully it's nothing super important. Alright, if I delete the Omnispheres, let's see how that goes. Nope, that's not working either. So I have to delete even more. Pattern 1. Alright, so that's not bad actually. If I delete these other ones here. I just have to quickly go through like a small amount of the layers here only. This kind of sucks. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe MS is taking up a lot of. Well, I'm a complete idiot. Thank you, Margie. I've been talking into nothing this whole time. All right, let me know if my mic is working now. But yeah, like I was saying, this beat was a little bit strange in that so much of this beat was done just with this one layer. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I'm a fool who muted his mic. So yeah, most of this beat was just this one layer right here. It's just a simple chord progression. I was really just experimenting, trying to start the beat off in a interesting way. But the beat just ended up being so full after I processed this sound. So yeah, I'll take you through my, I guess, thought idea. This will be the main sort of thing that I'll walk you through with this beat breakdown, just because my computer is probably going to explode if I start going into too many of the other sounds. So I thought, okay, this is going to be the first layer. I opened up Omnisphere. I think this, I can't remember which category this fell under, but it's a pretty straightforward, it's like a plucked string type of thing. And again, I turned off all the effects here. So at this point, I thought, okay, I want to get this sound to feel a little bit more full. I'm going to close everything because that's pretty overwhelming. Say I have the sound here. I go ahead and build this very straightforward chord progression. Again, I'm not very strong with music theory. I got no idea what these chords are. It just sounded cool to me, so I thought, okay, this is going to be the main idea of this beat, and I thought I'd probably have to layer a few more sounds on top of this idea to have this sound really full. But what ended up happening was after I processed all of these different sounds here, or sorry, once I processed this sort of layer right here, the beat really felt full afterwards. So I thought, I don't really need much else beyond this. So let's go through these different layers one by one. So let's turn this on. Starting off, one of the things I just quickly always like to start with is saturation / distortion. And I think this tool here sort of works as a saturation tool plus delay. So it's called Sigmund. Say a high quality flexible delay unit. So once I added this, not too different from the original sound, just a tiny bit more delay and a little bit more color on top from what it sounded like to me. So yeah, I just changed the color a tiny bit. It sounds a little bit more warped and wobbly at this point. So I thought, all right, that sounds cool. Next up, I think with this sound as it is, I can hear that it primarily sits in that upper region in terms of its frequencies. So if we just quickly throw on EQ here. So this is something that I mentioned when I first started making beats. I really struggled with getting that middle of the region, or sorry, the middle section, the sort of low mids of the beat to feel as present, because that is where a lot of the body and the fullness of a beat comes from. And so with this sound as it is, just isn't much presence down there. So just like I showed you guys in, I think it was the video that I did on lo-fi a couple of weeks ago, a trick that I like to do is just open up halftime and set the dry wet to halfway, so you guys can hear what a difference this is going to make. So now it sounds like we have something playing almost, I'm pretty sure if I just play this manually and just push these down an octave, it might feel similar. But nonetheless, what this does is basically takes your entire sound and plays it at a slower pitch fundamentally. And am I rocking Intel or AMD? Your motherboard is a 2011V1 socket. What does that mean? Does my motherboard suck? Do I not have a good motherboard? And how do you know what my motherboard is? I'm confused. So what was I talking about? Yeah, with this halftime, what this did was it just brought a lot of presence in that lower region that really makes this beat feel a lot more full. And it's just a quick little like hack, if you want to call it that, to really take a basic sound that you already have and really try to fill out the different areas within your beat and the different frequencies using one sound fundamentally. Yeah, nothing too different here. I think this is defaults to 1. I don't think I changed anything from the defaults. Maybe the mode here, I'm not 100% sure, I can't really remember. But yeah, I think I kept it as it is. Filter Freak, this was just a transitional effect, so I might as well delete that. I just turned this on and off when I was transitioning from different sections, but can't really show you because my computer might fry. The next one was Super VHS. So as you can see already, once I turned it on, this creates a little bit of static, so it creates a little bit of noise to really make the sound, the beat feel a little bit more full. I just cranked the static up here. And what this also does, just like I showed you, I think in the last beat breakdown that I did, Whoa, a bunch of messages came at once. I think, does it have pins on the MOBO or the CPU? Huh? I don't know what that even means. When do you use this transient processor? So yeah, I'll show. I don't think did I use a transient processor? No, I did. So yeah, we'll just take this step by step. The order that I did this in was probably in the exact same order that my thinking was. So yeah, we'll get there eventually. With Super VHS, add a little bit of noise, and the big thing is this wash as well as this magic. So this basically just widens the sound. So again, just me taking this one sound and make it even more large with this with the halftime that took the sound and made it fill up more regions in the frequency space. What Super VHS can do is take it and make it fill up a little bit more in both the stereo space as well as depth, so you guys can hear the before and after. So yeah, nice little reverb there, a little bit more stereo presence. It just felt like more of an actual like orchestrated sound, like it's actual live recording of an orchestra or something. I just really like the way this sounded. That nice reverb on it. After this, Decimort. This was just again to add a little bit more color on top. I don't think this had a huge effect from what I remember. And if I turn it on, so yeah, just a little bit more color on top, just like I mentioned in the video I put out last week. A bit crushing effect is something that I really like to use just to bring a sound a little bit more up front, and just add a little bit more color on top, because what it does is it creates harmonics in the high end. And just like I talked about in the course, what saturation can do, this is basically an extreme version of saturation where it can color a lot of the high end. Fab filter, probably just basic shaping here, getting rid of the frequencies that I don't need in the low and the extreme highs. So yeah, just constricting it a tiny bit, not too much of a big difference here. The transient processors, so this was used to really jack up the release. So what this is going to do is just make it feel a little bit more, probably a lot more compressed and a lot more full. So let's take a listen to the before and after again. So yeah, it takes that tail of the reverb and really pronounces it, and really makes it a lot louder fundamentally. Did I put that video out? Yeah, I did. I think that was on the depth video, where I basically did the opposite with my drums. To really tighten up that reverb, I really decreased the release. So if I did that here, that reverb sort of gets killed, but with this it really pronounces it. I really like that very last note. I don't know how that happened. It almost sounds like there's a flute in there now. And you guys saw how basic that chord progression is. I think it's just these weird little timings here. And once I added that halftime, it started to like really push the different notes to really be played at different times. And that's how I got that sort of weird, like, it almost sounds like a flute riff or something. Yeah, so that's part of the reason why I like to play my chords by hand instead of just clicking it in, because if this was completely quantized, let's see if you'd still get that cool effect. Maybe we would, I don't know. It's a little bit different, but we don't get that nice riff sound, that riff feeling right here. Slightly different, but yeah, it's just something that I like to do, just to be a little bit off kilter. And then a reverb, I think this also, yeah, so the dry wet's all the way down. So this is also just another tool that I use for the transitionary period. Wasn't part of the main loop. So yeah, that's how I processed that main instrument in here. Can this be used on an 808? With an 808, the waves are a lot slower. You might end up getting like a weird fluttering effect with an 808. What would be the reason you'd want to use it on an 808? Because if you want it to be a little bit more punchy and a little bit more immediate, I would probably reach for the actual ADSR in order to really tighten it up, rather than onto the actual, or using a transient processor. Because a transient processor, I guess if you wanted to extend the 808, yeah, I don't know if that would work. It depend on the actual transient processor. Give it a shot. I don't know. I use the Transient Master. Is that another plugin? Is Valhalla Verb worth picking up over FL's Reverb? So for me, I haven't really played with the FL's Reverb too much. This is just something that I've been using for a very long time, the Valhalla one. I think the few times I've actually tried to use FL Reverb, for some reason it crashes my computer. So that's part of the reason why I don't reach for it. I have no idea why. I think it's just like uninstalled incorrectly or something. Transient Master is Native Instruments. Is that what I'm using here? Oh, I think I remember using Transient Master when I was using my machine. I remember your first beat challenge where bass just comes in one bar. I can't remember back then. So that's the big idea here. Let's look at something else. The bass line, very simple and straightforward here. I just chose a bass patch from MS-20. This isn't by any means like some secret tool. I probably could have found something comparable in Omnisphere or Expand or something. I just happened to just quickly grab this one. Yeah, just a little bit of a synthy feel there, slapped on Decapitator to really bring out how dense it was. This is something that I do in a lot of my low end sounds with my kicks at times, and especially on my bass. This tool here shows up on every single one of my beats. So yeah. Now there's just a lot more color, but that sort of high end part, I don't think I really liked as much, so that's why I used some EQing here. I got rid of stuff that's really, really low. This probably might not be a good idea to brick wall it the way I did here. Maybe being softer would be a good idea. So yeah, this is just a little bit scrappy for me. I probably would have cleaned this up a bit more. And then Fruity Limiter, I believe this was just for sidechaining purposes. Kick is on the 5. Yeah, so this is just for side chaining. The first the BB challenge where we had to use 808 on every 2 bars. So that's what made me think, oh, okay. So if you try to use a transient shaper on an 808, by no means is it going to suddenly like extend your 808 to be insanely long. What transient processor fundamentally does, from my understanding, is it works similar to a compression tool. It's just different controls. So what I was doing with the transient processor on that first initial sound that I just showed you guys was that it basically compressed it and it took the quiet sounds and made them more loud. It's not actually taking something that's not there and extending it out. It's just taking what's quiet and making it more loud. So if you have an 808 and it's literally not playing anything, it's not going to suddenly make it longer or prolong the sound. It's just going to take the quiet part of your 808 and make it a little bit more loud. So yeah, it's not going to be some sort of magical tool that's going to stretch things out if that's what you're sort of asking there. Was that a tough challenge? I was actually thinking of doing something similar to that again. Upwards compression, I think it's called. Is that what it's called? I didn't know there was a specific name for it, but yeah. All right, so what else is in this beat? I use this tool called Punchbox to create my kick. Again, the only reason why I probably reached for this was because I said there's only 4 samples allowed, and so I thought, well, I have this tool that creates kicks, might as well use it. This has some pretty cool sounds in here for kicks. I have some effects on it right now. Let me take that. Yeah, I cut off a lot of high end with this kick, but nonetheless. So yeah, you guys can hear some of the cool. This is purely a kick tool. I was sent this for free, so that's the reason why I was using it. Whether I would buy this thing or not, I think it costs like $50 just for a kick tool. I probably would not. Hopefully they don't see this video, but yeah, they sent it to me for free, and that's the reason why it's on my computer. I did not buy that thing, and I don't know if I would recommend buying it. This creates kicks. Yeah, so it has a bunch of different like kick profiles in there. So you can see kick here, and you can choose the different ones here. And then it also gives you the ability to like top the kick with a bunch of different sort of, you can have the click, you can have bit crushing, distortion, different tools, different cuts, different sort of spreading. There are definitely some cool sounds in here. Like that is a nice juicy sort of 808 sound. And you can also play it like an instrument if you want. If I turn this on. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. I mean, if you think it's worth it to buy that, where did you cop that from? So yeah, like I said, it was sent to me for free from D16. So yeah, they sent me like a whole bunch of stuff. It's the same company that makes all these distortion tools that I keep showing you guys, like Decimort and Sigmund. These tools, I would say, I would definitely pay what they're worth. I think they're around, actually I can't even remember how much they're around, but you can probably catch them on sale. These are very central tools to me, and I cannot understate how much I value like saturators and distorters. So having a nice library of them is really important for the sound that I like. And so, yeah, those sounds that came in that bundle, or those plugins, are very valuable to me. This kick plugin as well. They have like some other weird stuff that they sent me. I think I already deleted it though. For the snare, expand snare. I have to unmute it. Hold on. Yeah, I mean, Camel Crusher to bring out the juice. This is how it would sound naturally. A little bit too bright and not enough body in it, so I increased the body with Camel Crusher, and I probably cut a lot of the high ends, yeah. And that's how I got that sort of a little bit more of a lower feeling, sort of darker feeling to that snare. Yeah, a little bit. I could have probably just done that in one EQ. I probably played around with a couple of saturation tools, distortion tools, but I took them off. Yeah, with expand, I thought this was probably going to be shitty for figuring out how to get drums into my beat, but Sigmund and Decimort, yeah, so they have a list of different saturators on their site. Sharp, I love Sigmund and Decimort. I think my favorites of the one that they sent me, D16. Decimort's awesome. Devastor is also really good. Redopter is also another one that I really use a lot. And Sinatris 2. Yeah, this is the chorus. I don't use this that much. So yeah, those three: Decimort, Devastor, and Redopter. I just happen to use Sigmund this time around, but those three are things that I use quite a bit. Decimort's $55, Sigmund's $75. How much is Redopter? I think that's 75 also. I think for me, Redopter, it's a really aggressive saturation distortion tool. Yeah, I think that one I really, really like using. Anyways, with Expand, I thought this was going to be a really junk tool to get my drums, but that actually has some pretty decent drum sounds in it. So each and every single key is a different snare. By all means, some of them do sound pretty absurd, but I'm sure there's a time and place for all of these, but this one, it's exactly what I needed. And finally, I guess the last thing that I'll show that I can show with this beat is the hi-hat pattern, which is a bit different. So I used the exact same thing, Expand, which has multiple sounds throughout the different keys here. Let me turn off the effects first. What is this routed to again? 3. So you guys can hear the sound at like sort of solo, not very present. These two hi-hats sound somewhat similar, so that's why I chose to play around with both of them for this pattern. If I played the pattern raw, it's not particularly unique. But the final product is far different. So this is part of the reason why this beat sounded a lot more full than maybe it originally would have if I didn't experiment and push the sounds. You guys can hear we have like different sounds sitting at different frequencies and different spaces, and we have that sort of weird low-end percussion sound that comes just from this pattern. Yeah, that sound that sort of sits right here. It almost sounds like a washed out snare. So I'll show you guys how I did that. What are you guys saying here? You guys gonna blow your next paycheck? What I'd say is that wait. That D6 company actually allows you to just download the demos. So I always say, like, don't jump out and buy all this stuff. Test out the demos, see if it would fit into what your aesthetic is and what you're going for. And at that point, if you really like it, then you can buy it. Yeah, that's what I'd say. I don't have Redopter. I think it's Redopter, R-E-D-O-P-T. Yeah, right here, Redopter 2. So that's the one that I really like because it's really aggressive. I didn't realize Expand had kicks and snares. It came with my MIDI board. Yeah, it has pretty decent sounds in there. You're gonna have to process them though, just like I did. But yeah, nonetheless, just send 10% of every paycheck to Plugin Boutique. So yeah, with this hi-hat sound here, we'll take this one by one again. So Devastor, just like I mentioned, this is a pretty extreme distortion tool. So again, before, after. Like you guys can hear how much balls this hi-hat now has, how much color it has, how present it is. This just sounded so weak and frail. Like this would have no chance of filling up this beat and making it sound full, but I knew with how minimal this beat was so far, I think this was, yeah, so after my kick and my snare, I programmed this. With how minimal this beat was, especially with this one layer and just the drums, I knew, okay, I'm gonna have to do something a little bit more special with my hi-hats. I really need them to take up a lot of space, and that's why I chose to experiment with the hi-hats like I did here. So first things first, what I did was I just juiced them up like crazy with Devastor. Really colored them quite a bit. But since buying Omnisphere is just my go-to. Alright, so after that, really boosted some more high end with this hi-hat with the EQ. Jeez, that's very, very present at this point. Now what I did after this was I used two instances of Shaperbox at the top right here and then at the bottom here. So at this point I thought, okay, this sounds pretty present, it sounds cool, but what can I do in terms of the actual rhythm and how much is going on with this hi-hat? I could experiment myself, or I could use a rhythm tool. And that's exactly what Shaperbox is. If I'm ever in an instance or a scenario where something has a nice sound to it, but I can't really figure out a sort of unique rhythm or something that really sort of shapes and changes the way something is playing, I'll reach for Shaperbox. And here I just cycled through different presets. I eventually landed on Timer 3. And that's how we got those cool little effects throughout. So it has some filtering going on. It's playing around with the stereo space and the panning here. Some volume modulation. So Shaperbox does a lot of different things all at once that takes your sound and really pushes it in really different ways. And obviously we have the timing effect here. After this, transient processor. Again, at this point, after I added Shaperbox, you guys can hear the difference. Before it sounds really present, really full. After Shaperbox, because of this volume modulation, a little bit more constrained. And so I really wanted to push it back into being a little bit more full again, which is why I took the transient processor and jacked up the release so it's a little bit more full once again. So you guys can see, sort of hear the difference there. What are you guys saying in the chat? Definitely copying Devastator 2, needs something like that ASAP. Yeah, like whenever I run into like a cheap junk sounding hi-hat like I did here, or something that's just, whether it's a drum sound or like a little sound that's sort of in my beat, a little noise, it can really overhaul and really color my sound to be so much more present and so much more unique, which again, I cannot undervalue how much distortion tools and saturators have really helped me push my sound. Karasama, I never use Shaperbox. Love Shaperbox, got it for free when you got Expand. I need to use those on the hi-hats. So yeah, after this, Reels, this was just to color it. So this took that really high brightness to it and really reduced it. I'm pretty sure if I just equaled these out, if I took the EQ off and sort of was a little bit more constrained with my plugin here, I probably could have gotten the exact same result. But just like I mentioned, this whole thing, it's always experimentation. It's never me sitting there and sort of knowing beforehand, okay, here are the 5 different plugins I'm going to use up to this point. You know, I added Devastator. I thought, okay, how does this sound fit in the beat now? It's very loud and very present. But I sort of wanted to push it even more. Let's add some more EQ. Okay, the sound is very present, but I sort of want to play with the rhythm. Let's add Shaperbox. After I added Shaperbox, I thought, okay, this sound isn't as loud and present anymore. So you guys can see it's sort of a continual process of evaluation and reevaluation, and really trying to constantly push the sound into different spaces using different tools. Luckily, I do have more of a powerful rig, but if I didn't, I'd probably have to like sort of rebalance the few plugins here. I could probably get a similar result, but nonetheless, when you see a lot of these sort of different plugins here, some of them just end up getting turned off because I sort of go back and I reassess, just like I mentioned in the course. You do the thing where you go back through your different sounds and you sort of reevaluate and you sort of check your assumptions to see whether this plugin did help or hurt. And that's why at times you'll see I'll just turn off stuff and maybe delete it afterwards. But nonetheless, with this sound, yeah, that's how I got this part here. And since Shaperbox was really controlling the rhythm of the sound, and then later on in the beat, I think second half of the beat, I wanted a different section of the beat to have a different rhythm. And so that's why I added Shaperbox once again. So I Shaperboxed my Shaperbox, and I basically created an automation clip. So you can see, where is it? Right here, Shaperbox mix. So I turned it on for this section of the beat. So basically just change the rhythm once again. If I bring this all the way up. So yeah, I got a completely different rhythm out of my hi-hats here just by taking Shaperbox, finding another preset, and automating it in a basically different way. So that's how I can quickly and easily play with the rhythm section of my beat and really change things up in a very substantial yet easy way. Is to just use Shaperbox and modulate or automate when it's on and off instead of just like manually playing around with different rhythms, because you don't that's part of experimentation. All these tools, they'll provide something that you might never have thought of yourself. Like I would have never thought to go into my sort of sound, modulate the volume like this, modulate the time, play around with the panning, play around with filtering. This does so many different things all in one go, and all these tools just let you experiment really quickly in different ways. So yeah. Reels is tape emulation like RC20. Yes, it's basically a tape emulation effect like RC20. That's a good synopsis, Grout. Did I miss some questions? Hopefully not. No problem, Ski. Thanks for the detailed reviews. All right, so I think I covered the big substantial things. I wish I could go into the smaller sounds, but again, my computer is gonna explode if I do. So hopefully you guys took away something there with that sort of beat breakdown. That was very fun. Next up, we'll do this again in 2 weeks. And also, I'll sort of do some housekeeping here. I'm going to release the Beat Batter drum kit probably end of May. And in June, I want to do a beat competition for you guys and give away hundreds of dollars in prizes, of which Devastor and Redopter and stuff are going to be some of the prizes. So we'll do one more challenge after this one, I think. So that will bring us to the end of May. And then I think we'll hold a beat competition for all of you guys with prizes that you can win. And I think if you guys have any ideas of like what the contest, what type of thing you want to see, let me know. I'm just thinking of whoever can make the best beat out of one of the samples from the course. That could be an idea, and just not have any constraints beyond that, and just choosing the one that I like the best, or the one that I think is the most creative, or what have you. But yeah, if you have any suggestions on what you guys would like to see for that contest, just DM me, and I'd love to hear, or just share it in the Better Beatmaker group. Yeah, we'll do it. All right. Glad you learned a lot, Margie. Happy you guys have enjoyed that beat breakdown. I'm also going to never won any prizes. I'm also going to add these beat breakdowns to the course in case you want to watch them again. And yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for coming. We did another 2-hour stream. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of your Sunday, and yeah, I'll